Hey, Pat Rigsby here today, and I've got a really unique and special interview with Sam Miller, the founder of Proteus. Now, if you're not familiar with Proteus, it's a groundbreaking system designed to revolutionize human strength assessment and empower individuals to understand and optimize their bodies. Now, I became familiar with Proteus through Eric Cressey and Kevin Hollabaugh in the baseball world because they've really made a dent in the sports performance landscape, working with really high level baseball players, professional football players like Patrick Mahomes and so many more. And they've now expanded into the fitness landscape. And I think Proteus is game changing. So I have the founder, Sam, today, pulling back the curtain on how Proteus came to exist, what the future is, and what you need to know about Proteus. So let's get to it. Welcome to the Fitness Business School podcast, the show for fitness business owners who want to grow their income, increase their impact, and improve their lifestyle. Be sure to listen till the end of this episode because we have a brand new special offer exclusive for listeners. So stay tuned. Hey, I'm here with Sam Miller from Proteus. And first of all, welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Pat. Great to be here.
So we covered some ground in the intro and got people up to speed on just a fraction of what Proteus is about and what you've been able to do in a pretty short period of time. But can you give us a little bit of the backstory? How did all of this just come to happen? How did it start?
Great question. We get asked that a lot. I think I'll first start with a couple comments on what it is that we do and what Proteus is. There's a lot of misconceptions, and it's its own animal. It's not really comparable to a lot of other tech out there. Well, ultimately what we're doing is Proteus is redefining how we quantify, improve physical strength and power, but moving beyond one-dimensional methods. So we focus on quantifying 3D, rotational, multiplanar, and functional movements. And we've got a product that we're entirely B2B, but we sell our hardware and our software to commercial fitness businesses that's primarily for addressing three issues, which is one is outdated performance technology. The second is rising client expectations. And third is growing competition. So our product is used to increase member performance and results in a dramatic fashion, get more members into premium services, create premium services, and keep members engaged and coming back. And kind of the story of where this began, I founded the company in 2016, but it was further back than that, or the origins. I grew up outside of Boston in the suburbs, kind of grew up playing every sport you can imagine. My main sport was soccer. A super painful condition in my knee called osteochondritis dissecans. Spent ages 9 through 14 in and out of athletic training and physical therapy. And I was doing a ton of isolated joint movement, both isolated muscle testing and isolated muscle training. And I remember specifically one day walking out of a session with one of my teammates who was recovering from a back injury. And we each had a sheet of paper that had the same training program on it. And so that started this kind of deep frustration, this lack of personalization. And looking back, of course, our programs couldn't have been significantly different because there really were no measurement or assessment tools that were available, that were efficient and accurate, that would allow a trainer or a clinician to understand the differences between me and my teammate in a way that they design a plan for each of us. So there's personnel problems. Fast forward to my 20s, graduated from Vanderbilt. I studied economics and history, was on a totally different career path. And I had really good experiences covering a lot of ground from engineering, architecture, design, into business operations and then sales for a large construction management and engineering firm, specializing in healthcare and life sciences. I had no interest in doing that long term. And I was really inspired by the emergence of the quantified self movement and really interested in biometrics. And the more I explored this, kind of harkening back to my younger athletic training and rehabilitation experiences and the lack of personalization, and kind of realized if we have cameras for biomechanics and wearables for sleep measurement, like what's the equivalent for physical strength, right? Especially functional strength and power. And I think that led me to the conclusion that there's this massive void in data around one of the most critical pillars of human performance, which is physical strength and power. And the way that's measured is very one-dimensional. The 1D movements that we use to evaluate physical strength represent less than 5% of movements we perform in real life. And it's very difficult to, it's not that it's rotation or functional strength is not valuable to measure. It's just incredibly difficult, if not impossible to. And I think if you look at a lot of the connected fitness companies out there, a lot of it is around digitizing an existing piece of equipment. Right? Put a sensor on a bike or a screen on a cable machine, and that's great. And those are mainly content plays. What it doesn't do is open up the ability to produce measurement and diagnostics in a way that's profoundly new, different, or valuable. And so my kind of realization was you have to create an entirely new piece of equipment. And that's what led to the beginnings of Proteus. I spent years talking to hundreds of professionals, reading thousands of research articles and medical textbooks, and got to that point where it's like that Henry Ford quote, if you ask people what they wanted, they'd set a faster horse, right? And so that's what led us to create an entirely new type of equipment. And the inspiration for that came from rebooting something that my dad started decades ago. My dad was working as a visiting scientist at MIT in the early 90s. He spun out of MIT and he invented this brilliant mechanical system that he developed or wanted to develop for the purpose of simulating sport movements. We used to call it the machine in our basement of my house where he was developing it. And he never really got it to work, but the underlying principles were brilliant. And I realized if I could take that mechanical concept, make that work, and provide resistance in all directions to create kind of a force field, that would allow for the measurement for us to focus on and software to produce measurements and assessment around multiplanar and functional strength. So left my job 2015, bootstrapped 18 months before raising our first dollar in a startup incubator in a windowless community college space, and spent the first 4 years just patenting, partnering with a hospital for special surgery and cold calling, driving around in a van. And fast forward, we're now in a spot, we've got almost 400 machines out there, and we've grown 10x in 2 years. We've got 70,000 users, from some of the best athletes in the world to some of the best trainers in the world. And we work with, as a B2B solution, we work with some anywhere from startup businesses to some of the most elite training and medical institutions out there. And this is a really big step towards our ultimate aim of becoming the universal standard for measuring physical strength and power.
So you've kind of permeated a variety of corners of the sport and fitness landscape. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is a user, but before we recorded, I got to hear a little bit about how you connected with Eric Cressy originally, who is a friend, and we've done a number of episodes here. So would you be kind enough to share that story of how you kind of introduced Proteus to Eric and CSP?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like I said, our vision and ambition for Proteus is large. And I'll say now we have proof points that exist to I think provide proof of what we ultimately want to do, which is that Proteus technology, hardware and software, is ubiquitous. Right? And we've got the product is so versatile and provides applications that are so broad from an athlete's entire journey, from post-operative rehab to peak performance training. We now have, of those 70,000 users, they range in age from age 8 to age 93. And we're in environments way beyond elite sports. And that's really where we see the biggest market opportunity. That said, for a technology like this, I made the decision very early on that the only way that we're going to be successful is if Proteus is not the one talking about Proteus, at least initially. And that there's a lot of gimmicks in this space, and there's a lot of great tools and technology, but there's a lot of gimmicky stuff. And this, up at first glance, might look like people say, well, what the hell is this? I mean, what is this machine? It's this crazy. Why would I need this? Without knowing. And I understand that reaction completely. And our take from the beginning was we are going to authentically win over some of the most credible people in this space, starting with elite medical and elite sports. And that was what first partnership we had was with the Hospital for Special Surgery, the number one orthopedic hospital in the US, who turned from a collaborator to a research partner. They've done research proving the benefits of Proteus's resistance compared to a free weight and cable machine, which is profound. And all the way towards they became a customer and then an investor, actually. And so with Eric Cressy, we got to a place where we had only had 3 or 4 machines out there. And we said, we really are, with these kind of early adopter sites, we're seeing some phenomenal success and adoption and opportunities in elite sports, specifically in baseball training. And we thought, well, we really want to expand in the space. Who do we want to amplify that message? And first person that came to mind was Eric Cressy. So we said, all right, let's target Eric. And I think I started with cold calls and emails and didn't answer anything. He wasn't interested. And we joked about this recently because looking back, he said that he went to our website and he was like, I have no interest in this, this product. And I think what we were putting out there at the time is our public messaging has always been way behind what the product actually does. It's a different problem, but he thought we were like rowing simulation machine or something like that. So I basically got to a point where I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to get this in front of him so we can meet. And ended up getting to a place where through a secondary connection, teed up a meeting with him where he said, okay, come to Hudson, which is just Western Mass, and we'll meet. You can show me what you got. And so I drove Proteus up those days, it was a lot of driving with Proteus in a van, but I drove it up to Boston from New York and turned it into a 2-hour meeting. And you could see the wheels turning within 5 minutes. He kind of was like, okay, this is very different than what I thought. And from there, he turned into a strategic advisor, and the relationship has expanded far beyond that. And we even have a Cressy performance test in our software. That's 17 movements that's available across all Proteus systems, 17 movements you perform in 5 minutes per athlete, and produces basically force velocity profiling and tells you exactly what areas of the body to train and how, which is like cheat sheet for trainers. So that's just one example, but it was a slow burn winning him over or getting to him. Once we got to him, then he moved pretty quickly, and we knew that he would because he's a cerebral kind of guy, and he kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of our expansion in this space.
Well, I mean, I think that obviously from a Proteus perspective, that's really cool and really an awesome springboard, right? And then just from the listeners of the podcast, I think there are some takeaways beyond that. Just the perseverance, the willing to keep. If you've got something good, then it's your responsibility to go, as you alluded to, amplify the message. You have to get it out there. It's your, it falls to your shoulders. And I think that was such a cool story. I was like, man, we're not going to overlook this one.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like our core values at Proteus, everyone that we've hired on our team, is we're very scrappy, incredibly gritty, and obviously very smart group of people as well. But everything that we do is maintain the highest kind of moral and ethical standards as well. But as a business leader that is creating a product that is a solution for other business owner operators and leaders, every single part of our business is around doing what we can to invest in and develop tools that will help our partners be successful and leverage Proteus to get the most value. And I often say, as I'm talking to potential customers and customers themselves, share a lot of the same traits, which is You got to work really hard and hustle. And no matter what business you're in, that is absolutely the truth. We like to say that Proteus helps really good business operators prove how good they are and then accelerate what they're doing. And one thing is you can objectively measure the results and the improvements of all your members and see that at a macro level and a micro level, but prove the improvement or the value of your quality of your services. But beyond that, I mean, the ones that really know how to implement new tools to their advantage are the ones that we see just absolutely kill it with Proteus financially.
So, I mean, that's a really good segue for us to talk a little bit more about how this is gone beyond. It's great. Not everybody does train Cy Young Award winners or NFL MVPs or whatever else. How this has started to really break into a more mainstream kind of fitness landscape. I mean, you guys are doing some stuff with Equinox now. You already alluded to it on in the beginning of the podcast, talking about how people can use this to differentiate themselves from an ever increasing volume of competition in the training landscape, how they can deliver better results, have profit centers. Let's start to unpack some of that. So I think let's talk about how somebody like Equinox is integrating this into their business.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll provide a couple of kind of anecdotes to, I think, show or to kind of articulate or illustrate what that looks like. Let me just start with kind of a reframing of, I talked a little bit at a high level about what Proteus is meant to do and what it does from a measurement standpoint, but there's two primary value propositions that are important to cover here. Will help, I think, any listener really understand what we're doing. So we have a software product that's kind of anchored with this hardware system. What that does is it streamlines performance testing for any movement imaginable, we've got standardized tests so you can create your own. Some of those create your own tests are you literally choose from a library of basically infinite movements. And you can do as many as, say you did 20 movements that you selected that you wanted to test as part of your evaluation. An athlete could do those, and you do those in less than 30 seconds per movement. So it's insanely efficient, right? We like to say that the alternative would be you'd need 20 pieces of equipment, 3 hours of time with a PhD, right? You get about 10% of what we produce in 5 minutes. So we've streamlined performance testing for physical strength and power with a single machine that offers reports. And those reports allow you to contextualize the results. So we've got 70,000 users age 8 to age 93. When you finish a report, if you're a 90-year-old, yeah, it might be cool to compare yourself to pro athletes, but probably not that valuable from a making training decisions standpoint, right? So we have a billion data points that we've developed, right, over the last 5-6 years. That's growing exponentially. And last year alone, 80 million reps were recorded on Proteus systems. This is new normative data. And so when you finish a performance test, no matter what movements you're doing, you select whatever demographic you want to compare yourself to. It could be aspirational, or it could just be someone like you, right? You set age, sex, height, weight, sport, if applicable, and you can dial down specific. And we're so transparent, we'll show you the sample sizes to say, you can be this specific, but if it's a sample size of 8 people, you make the call whether that's meaningful. But in most cases, our standardized tests have tens of thousands of results. In any event, then it contextualizes all the results. So basically, what percentile you're in across the board for all these movements, and then a roll-up report that basically shows this visual of, are you lacking foundational strength, right? And therefore have to train heavier resistance at slower speeds, right? Are you speed dominant, strength dominant, high strength speed? Where on the force velocity curve do you need to train across any of these movements? So in a couple of minutes, a trainer basically gets this information that says immediately, where should I dial in this individual's training? And we give recommendations that are hyper-personalized in these shareable reports. Some of our sites sell these reports, but oftentimes it's baked into the rate, and it's used at places like Equinox to convert more members into personal training services. In those cases, we've seen increases from novice trainers increasing their conversion from assessments to clients from 10% to 42% the first month you introduce Proteus. And then alternatively, if you're just using it with your existing members on a personal training basis with a personal trainer, we find that the first month that you introduce Proteus, that the same group of members are going to book 77% more sessions. So people are booking more sessions, so they want to train more frequently. So there's all these different avenues there from a monetization standpoint. And Equinox specifically is interesting too, because some of the trainers that have adopted it the most were initially the ones that dismissed it. And it was, I don't have elite athlete clients. Oh, why would I use this? And now those are the ones that have a 60-year-old client who uses it because for not just testing, but training. And that's the secondary benefit, which is that you're not just using this as like an in-body, but for physical strength. It's also a training tool. And so the thing that enables the measurement, which I mentioned earlier, is constant force. We call it 3D resistance. We've patented many things about Proteus. 3D resistance is no matter what direction or speed you move, it provides a constant force. And it feels like moving through a fluid, right? Like a force field, and you can change the viscosity of that. And what this does, aside from enabling the measurement and the software side of things, is it provides this incredible training experience that's totally unique. And we've certified with the Hospital for Special Surgery, for example, that if you do certain movements and do this on Proteus, so do those same exact movements on a free weight or same exact movements on a cable machine, Proteus produces up to 95% more peak muscle activation, peak and duration. So, and the reason is because there's no inertia. You're being resisted throughout an entire range of motion. So when you're doing a rotational movement, it's not just that you're getting resisted in one sweet spot and not the ends, right? And then if you change your foot position on a cable machine, it's a totally different sweet spot and so forth. And you're getting resistance on the return too, right? So it's all directions and simultaneously. And this provides this incredibly unique and sticky resistance training experience that has applications. It's totally safe. It is used for anything from peak power. If you watch quarterback, and Mahomes is training 3 times a week for speed and power development, but it's most popular, believe it or not, with the 40 to 65-year-old non-athletes who use it to basically produce a very safe, low impact resistance training experience that is hyper time efficient. And some of those examples are like, there's this one early adopter woman, her name is Carol Lay. I can say her name because we talk a good amount still. She's a 55-year-old in Southern New Jersey. It trains at Davis Sports Medicine, one of her early sites. And she used Proteus in her therapy and then got hooked. And once she fully recovered, she kept coming back, and she has diabetes, and her doctor wanted her to improve A1C, and physical activity helps your body use insulin more efficiently. So she basically was coming in for Proteus workouts, 10-minute sessions. Instead of going to the gym, she'd come 3 times a week, $25 per, it was really turned into a 20-minute session. And over the course of a couple months, it dramatically improved A1C. And she actually created a community there of other like people that started this phrase, "Do you Proteus?" And she says Proteus changed their life. So we see that a lot more now.
That's pretty wild. That's pretty awesome because, I mean, let's face it, the fitness industry has really evolved in some ways. I mean, in other ways, maybe not, right? Like in some ways, it's evolved a great deal in that there are far more boutique options out there. There are no shortage of franchises that are kind of all based off this group training model that bears a lot. If you strip a lot of the bells and whistles away, they're still kind of rooted in a lot of the same core concepts. But at the same time, a lot of it's still, it's dumbbells and barbells and body weight exercises. And so
And that's all great. That's all great. Our job is not to say, I made a mistake early on thinking that could come into a place and say, stop everything you're doing and use Proteus. That's not our position. Our position is, it's a training tool. It is an incredibly powerful tool in your toolkit if you're fortunate enough to have it. But as a testing tool, it's the one and only tool that you should use, if anything. And oftentimes use it in conjunction with other testing tools, whether it's force plates or body composition, but there's nothing that can measure functional strength, especially the way that we do it and that efficiently. And so we like to say that's the staple piece. And then the results give you suggestions for how you should use your other tools, right? When and what body areas should you use barbells? And some people like to say, well, I already know that. Well, there's a lot of people that are really good at that, but that's the same thing as saying, I can make an assessment on you physically using my eyes, that's questionable. So we give the trainer superpowers to make those decisions and really informed in a super short period of time in a way that their client loves and understands and gets really good buy-in and helps inform the foundation of an individualized training program. However they create that program, off Proteus, on Proteus, doesn't matter. But what we find is that the sites that have a Proteus in there, everyone's getting tested. And then you might test every 2, 4, 6 weeks, or even quarterly, show you progress, everything, all that sort of stuff. But what you're doing in between, Proteus informs that, and then often is used as one of the training tools. And that's why at commercial fitness businesses, we don't see anything less than 200 to 600 sessions a month on Proteus. You can use it every single day with limited soreness, and it's totally safe, and it's incredibly sticky. And that usage per site has not decreased. It's only increased from earliest adopter sites 5 years ago. So it's not becoming less popular. That's for sure.
So I think that's just such an interesting idea, because all too often it almost feels like let me back up a step. When you talked about how people are using this as a conversion tool, right? And yes, this is, the assessments are, objective, and then you can go and compare yourself to whatever population segment you want to. I mean, a lot of times people in the fitness industry are apprehensive to sell because they almost feel like it's antagonistic, right? Like it's, I win, you lose. They call it closing the sale, right? So whereas here it's just objective information that is allowing the prospect to convince themselves that this is the best possible solution for them. It's not you having to twist somebody's arm into believing that you can help. So I think that's fascinating and really valuable.
I would agree. And I think if you just think about MS, right, commonly used assessment protocol tool, and has a lot of merit. I mean, it's been established and it can be really effective. It also takes a lot of time. It's a little imprecise. It's a little laborious. And does it produce a great buy-in, conversion, and understanding from a client who's trying to really, why are they doing that? They're doing it to try to value, understand where they have strengths, weaknesses, what to focus on, and why and how. Oftentimes, we're seeing this a lot more as folks are coming to us saying, especially in the commercial fitness space, saying, we do FMS, we are kind of over this, and we're looking for something that's different, more efficient, and is more as strength training, especially and power-based training is becoming kind of more popular. We want to do this beyond the squat, right? And that's where we've started to have Proteus be adopted more into as basically, all right, we're introducing this is our standard assessment tool. It takes 5 to 10 minutes per individual. By the way, we have a group testing mode. You can test up to 10 individuals at the same time. So it fits into these very busy environments as well. And we've already started to pull incredible insights from this normative data too, including, for example, things that people don't know, which is, okay, every 10 years you age, you lose 10% of your power across the whole body. That's somewhat known from a foundational movement standpoint. But here's the thing that we've discovered is that you lose power for functional, meaning rotational and multiplanar movements, 18% faster every 10 years you age than you do uniplanar movements, which are the ones that are tested the most. So if you're going to, especially as you age, if you're going to be testing and training certain movements as you get older, you probably should be looking more at the rotational, multiplanar, functional, dynamic movements. And to really narrow that further, that starts with testing. And if you want to do that really efficiently, you use Proteus.
Very cool. I could sit here and just ask all sorts of questions for the remainder of the day, but I don't know that it's practical, and I'd probably just run off on a million different tangents. But there's so much more. I mean, we've scratched the surface. I've learned a number of things already. If somebody is curious like me and wants to learn more about Proteus, where can we direct them?
Sure. So 2 places. First is to get directly in touch with us, proteusmotion.com, Proteus motion.com. There's a blue button on the website. I think it says request a demo or book a demo, but it's really just get in touch. Submit that information. We're incredibly responsive. And actually that's where we have most of our conversations starting through that angle. So it's directly on our website. Submit a form. Tell us if you're a facility owner, a little bit about yourself, and we'd love to be in touch. For visuals and some videos, and we're across all channels, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, etc. I always recommend Instagram at Proteus Motion is a fantastic resource. We have a ton of videos, content, announcements through that channel specifically. We're going to be expanding to other channels more concretely soon. Those are really good places to start.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we have the links in the show notes, and as we kind of disseminate this episode, we'll make sure those are easily accessible there too. Sam, I really appreciate it. This has been wonderful for me. This was something for regular listeners of the podcast know that I don't really do a ton of interviews, but selfishly, this was something I certainly wanted to dig deeper about because I thought it was a game-changing tool. And so glad we could share it with you guys. So thanks a bunch.
Appreciate it, Pat. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Fitness Business School. Before you go, I have a quick announcement. One of the things that we've been doing with our current clients is taking them through this ideal business diagnostic. And really what it is, this checklist that allows you to pinpoint exactly what your business needs next so you can keep improving, keep growing, and build a business that you love to own. One that pays you well, one that allows you to have the impact you want to have, and one that allows you to have a lifestyle that you truly enjoy. In this diagnostic, we walk through everything and we do an evaluation and can instantly pinpoint what you need to do next to build that business that you want. I'm going to extend this opportunity to get on with either me or my team and take you through this evaluation and fix your business's most vital needs fast. So if we take you through this, you're going to be able to make those vital changes that you need to finally have what I call your ideal business. If you'd be interested in going through this entirely free, risk-free diagnostic with us and learn what you already have in place, what you're doing well, and where your greatest opportunities for rapid improvement are, just shoot me an email with diagnostic in the subject line to pat@patrigsby.com. Again, an email to pat@patrigsby.com with diagnostic in the subject line will get you scheduled and take you through this evaluation to help you build the business you want.